Hello, and welcome to The Sleepy Owl, a cozy nook where you can gently unwind and drift into a peaceful night's rest. Tonight, we're sharing another soothing story, one that can help settle your mind and foster a feeling of quiet calm. But first, let's take a moment to prepare our bodies and minds for a tranquil, rejuvenating sleep. Settle in comfortably, and with each slow inhale and gentle exhale, allow the day's worries to gradually fade away. It can be challenging to pull away from the day's busyness, particularly as bedtime approaches. Yet remember, the less we stress over falling asleep quickly, the easier it becomes for our minds to release any tension. Let the gentle rhythm of your breath carry off lingering concerns, and let tonight's story be your guide toward deep relaxation. Now make yourself comfortable and let the warmth of the sleepy owl envelop you. Enjoy the story, and may you find a restful, peaceful slumber here in our little nighttime sanctuary. In a city spun from sun-baked earth and time immemorial, dwelled a boy named Cale. His days were charted by the school bell's chime, the hours afterwards dissolving into explorations of serpentine alleyways, vibrant cacophonies of the marketplace, and spirited games of catch in the sun-bleached expanse of the central square, dust rising like celebratory smoke alongside his companions. When twilight painted the sky in hues of bruised plum and fading gold, Kyle would trace his steps back to the sprawling mud brick edifice that housed his sprawling family. The uppermost floor held the chamber Kyle shared with his two elder brothers. Below lay the sleeping quarters of his parents, his aunt, his grandparents. But the ground floor, the largest expanse, was the true heart of the home, humming with life. Here resided the shop and the workshop, the twin souls of their existence. For generations beyond counting, Kyle's kin had conjured miracles from thread. Their carpets, whispered of across leagues, sought by connoisseurs and emissaries alike. These were not mere floor coverings, but woven dreams. Diminutive prayer mats and devotional greens and golds adorned the shop walls like sacred texts. Scarlet runners unfurled with opulent swirling motifs traced in metallic thread that caught the light. And sequestered in the back, rolled tight as ancient scrolls, slumbered the monumental carpets, too vast and precious for constant display, their densely packed patterns revealing dazzling floral universes and intricate geometries when finally coaxed open. Returning homeward, Kyle enjoyed traversing the shop first, offering a greeting to his aunt presiding over the counter. Passing through this treasury of textile art, he'd push through the beaded curtains separating shop from sanctum. He savored the cascade of cool glass beads against his skin. A fleeting, ticklish embrace, accompanied by their chiming sigh as he slipped through the doorway. Beyond lay the workshop. Here, invariably, his parents and older brothers were ensconced, seated before the tall looms, their concentration absolute, as if held captive by an enchantment woven from wool and silence. Kyle often hesitated on the threshold, reluctant to fracture their focused trance. He would linger, observing, marveling at the practiced dexterity. Currently, their collective energy poured into two immense commissions, destined for a magnate in a neighboring metropolis, undertakings that would consume months. Kyle's parents occupied one loom, his brothers the other. Both structures stood vertical, the four weavers perched cross-legged on cushions, their hands orchestrating the intricate dance of weft through warp. Fingers blurred across the taut strands, plucking and knotting with a speed and grace that transformed the looms into silent harps, weaving not sound, but intricate symphonies of color and form. Their fluid, hypnotic movements held Cale mesmerized. He knew from a board of attempts the profound difficulty of their craft. It demanded reservoirs of patience, boundless creativity, and a meticulousness bordering on obsession. It also required a particular digital grace, a conversation between hand and thread that Coyle's own fingers stubbornly refused to learn. Attempts had been made, lessons patiently offered by parents, grandparents, elder siblings. Yet the requisite alchemy remained elusive, his own hands clumsy interlopers in that sacred dance. Cale had reconciled himself to a future unbound from the loom. His path lay elsewhere. What shape it might take remained fluid, shifting with the currents of his daydreams. Sometimes he envisioned himself a traveling merchant astride a hardy mount, traversing sun-scorched deserts and formidable mountain passes. Other times he imagined peering into the celestial vault as an astronomer, deciphering the cosmos's whispered secrets. Or perhaps a simpler contentment, remaining here amidst the familiar textures and faces, facilitating the passage of his family's woven artistry into the world. That held its own quiet appeal, staying rooted in the place, with the people he loved. But the horizon of adulthood still seemed distant, veiled in mist, time aplenty to chart his course. For now, contentment lay in observing the familial rhythm, drifting between rooms as evening deepened and the aroma of his grandmother's spiced rice dish, his favorite, began to permeate the air, signaling the imminent conclusion of the day's weaving. He passed back through the rattling bead curtain, drawn again to the densely packed aisles of the shop. Wandering among the finished pieces always brought a quiet pleasure. So many creations, each a universe unto itself. He trailed a finger across the yielding wool, tracing the labyrinthine paths of a border pattern towards its heart. A soothing, meditative act, following the sinuous line to its conclusion. Touching the carpets, Kyle sometimes perceived subtle distinctions beyond mere color or design. Intellectually, he knew the material was largely uniform, sheep's wool, transformed by dyes coaxed from roots and berries. Yet, as his fingertip traversed the pile, migrating from crimson to indigo, from petal motif to scrolling vine, a distinct sensation arose, a pleasant tremor, akin to a cool zephyr on a humid night, coursed through him. Something resided within these threads, a latent magic. Yet, one tapestry perpetually snagged his gaze, a siren call in wool and dye. Hung upon the rearmost wall, its field pulsed with the deep wine-dark blush of twilight. Yet within its borders bloomed every conceivable hue, emerald forests, sun-struck saffron, the iridescent shimmer of pearl and silver threads catching the light like trapped starlight. Dominating the center soared the arbor vitae, a magnificent golden tree, its myriad branches heavy with luminous fruit, and nestled in the four corners miniature Edens, walled gardens rendered in breathtaking detail. This was what captivated Cale most. Each garden, while echoing the others, possessed its own unique soul. From afar, the composition appeared flawlessly symmetrical, four identical enclosures, each centered by an identical fountain. But closer inspection revealed subtle divergences, whispered variations on a theme. One garden flourished as a fig orchard, another burgeoned with pomegranate trees. The fauna shifted too. Goats gave way to hens, horses to preening peacocks. Even the depiction of grass varied. One corner boasted vertical strokes of gold, while the one below shimmered with silver waves reminiscent of a stylized sea. In younger years, Cale had lost hours immersed in this woven world, hypnotized by its layered intricacies. His gaze would drift from quadrant to quadrant, pondering which paradise he preferred. Perhaps one day, grown and established, he too would possess such a garden, complete with fountain, peacocks, and pomegranates, heavy on the bough. Now, a little older, the garden still fueled his reveries, but his thoughts also turned toward their creator, his great-grandmother. Family lore held that she had manifested this masterpiece single-handedly, a torrent of inspired creation lasting mere months, the vision gifted to her in a dream. Cale had never known her, yet contemplating her handiwork forged a palpable connection across the years. Though he lacked her prodigious talent, a quiet pride swelled within him, pride in kinship with such artistry. Unlike its brethren, the garden carpet was never destined for sale. It transcended commerce, a priceless heirloom, the family's soul woven into its fabric. Were a potentate to arrive offering coffers overflowing with gold, the carpet would remain. Cale found solace in this permanence, knowing his favorite tapestry would always hold its place of honor, available for contemplation whenever the mood struck. Its dreamlike details a constant invitation. Later, cocooned in the profound quiet of the sleeping house, Cale found the image of the carpet resurfacing in his mind. Fragments of the day drifted past his inner eye, the sun-drenched square where conversations with friends had unfolded, skeins of freshly dyed wool drying like vibrant blossoms on the patio, and the four glittering paradises woven into the heirloom rug. Sleep remained elusive, but Cale lay contentedly, observing the slow procession of images. The room was still, save for the gentle susurrus of his brother's breathing and the distant, melancholic cry of a night bird piercing the darkness. It felt as if he and the bird were the sole waking entities in the slumbering city. On nights like these, when sleep proved coy, Cale often rose, a quiet perambulation through the house, a deep draught of cool air on the roof terrace. This ritual often cleared his mind, paradoxically leaving him refreshed, yet more receptive to slumber. Upon returning to bed, sleep usually claimed him instantly. And so, after a period of wakeful stillness, Cale slipped from his bed. Lighting a small candle, He donned soft slippers and moved with practiced silence across the floor, careful not to disturb his brothers. Down the stairs he crept, step by slow step, until he stood within the shadowed expanse of the shop. In the midnight hush, the space felt transformed, sacred. Silence reigned supreme, broken only by the flickering dance of his candle flame and the ethereal wash of moonlight filtering through a high window. Silver beams lay like benevolent hands upon the stacked carpets. Cale smiled softly, observing the gentle fall of light. Perhaps the moon, too, understood the need for quiet reverence here. His intention was to step outside onto the terrace, to savor the night's cool kiss before returning to bed. But first, one lingering look at the garden carpet, hanging sentinel on the far wall. He cherished this stolen intimacy, the absence of the daytime bustle, no aunt at the counter, no chattering patrons, just him, the candlelight, and the resplendent tapestry. Time seemed to pool, motionless. The familiar pattern shifted, colors blurring and reforming in the unsteady illumination, playing tricks on the eye. Then, an impossibility. The woven fabric seemed to breathe. A gentle undulation rippled across its surface, making the patterned foliage quiver as if stirred by an unseen current. Kyle blinked, scanning the still air, the closed window. A trick of the weary eye, surely? The weight of the textile alone defied such delicate motion. Sleep tugged at his senses, whispering illusions. He told himself it was time for bed. Yet, as his gaze returned to the carpet, certainty struck him. It was moving, a soft ripple escalating into a distinct billowing, pulling away from the wall. He stepped back, astonished, as the carpet detached itself smoothly, silently. It hovered now, suspended in the pregnant silence before him, a rectangle of impossible buoyancy. Cale blinked again, rubbed his eyes. A dream it had to be, but the vision persisted, solid, undeniable. Hesitantly, he extended a hand, his fingers brushing the familiar plush nap. Real. Utterly, astonishingly real. The carpet drifted, weightless, alive with silent purpose, now gliding toward the staircase. It moved like some vast, exotic moth or a creature from the abyssal deep, swimming through the air with ponderous grace. Though inanimate, it radiated sentience, a silent invitation, a guidance. Cale followed, caught in a waking trance. Upwards he ascended, past the darkened doorways behind which his family slept, the carpet leading the way like a silent, knowing guide, up to the very top, emerging onto the flat expanse of the roof terrace. The night sky arched above, strewn with diamond dust. On any other night, Kyle would have lost himself in stargazing. But tonight, his entire being focused on the marvel before him. The carpet had paused its ascent, hovering now, undulating gently in the still air. Threads caught the moonlight, gleaming with an inner luminescence. Wonder washed over Cale. It felt torn from the pages of the fantastical tales his mother spun at bedtime in his younger years. Stories populated by jinn, sprites, and eloquent beasts. To imagine such wonders was one thing, to witness them, quite another. A surge of pure joy coursed through him. Even if this were merely a dream, what a magnificent dream it was. Yet the sensation was intensely real. And when the carpet unfurled itself fully before him, settling slightly as if in offering, Cale felt no hesitation. An instinct, deep and certain, told him what to do. He stepped onto its surface and settled cross-legged near the center, directly upon the image of the great tree. Once comfortable, he stroked the velvety pile, a silent signal of readiness. The carpet seemed to comprehend. Seconds later, it stirred, lifting smoothly from the terrace floor. Upward it rose, higher and higher, until, like a great bird taking wing, it launched into the night sky. Suddenly, impossibly, Cale was riding a flying carpet. He soared above the familiar rooftops, carried aloft with an effortless grace, feeling as weightless as a wind-borne seed. Peering cautiously over the edge, he gasped. The city sprawled below, already distant. It felt akin to riding astride a griffin or some mythical winged steed. The carpet moved with a confident fluidity, navigating the air currents like a living entity. Strangely, the sensation felt utterly natural. A peculiar serenity settled over him. The weave beneath felt solid, trustworthy, an ancient, knowing presence cradling him as it navigated the invisible pathways of the night. As it glided onward, Cale drank in the panoramic view. He knew these streets intimately, yet from this vantage point they were transformed into shadowed canyons and intricate mosaics. Under the moon's impartial gaze, familiar landmarks rendered alien and mysterious. Naturally, at this hour, the city lay veiled in darkness, its inhabitants deep in slumber. The only illumination came from the flickering street lanterns and the occasional lonely candle flame in a window. The moonlight didn't reveal sharp details but bathed everything in a soft, silvery luminescence. Rooftops gleamed as if polished, burnished like precious metal. Cale imagined a secret nocturnal ritual, the moon, after midnight, performing a silent blessing, touching each house in turn. And below, the city slept on, oblivious to the magic unfolding overhead. Cale smiled, feeling privileged, the sole witness to this clandestine beauty. But as the carpet drifted eastward towards the dark ribbon of the river, he realized his solitude was illusory. At least one other soul shared the tranquil hours. Near the riverbank stood the grand university edifice, its brick tower piercing the night, and at its apex, silhouetted against the stars, a figure peered through a telescope. Cale knew astronomers resided in the city, but had never observed one at their nocturnal vigil. Flying closer, curiosity piqued, he leaned over the carpet's edge. To his surprise, the astronomer was young, perhaps not much older than his own brothers. Cale had vaguely pictured a wizened sage. This was just an ordinary man, lost in contemplation of the infinite. The astronomer seemed utterly absorbed. Cale thought he might pass by unnoticed, but just then the man stepped back from his instrument and looked up, directly at Cale and his impossible conveyance. Across a mere chasm of breathless night air, two solitary watchers met. A silent moment stretched between them, thick with shared astonishment. Unsure how else to react, Cale offered a tentative wave. After a beat of stunned hesitation, the astronomer mirrored the gesture, perhaps wondering, like Cale, if dreams had claimed him, or if it was simply very late indeed. The carpet continued its journey, now paralleling the river's course. Feeling more secure, Cale decided to lie down. The plush wool felt as welcoming as his own bed. Supine, gazing directly upwards, he had the perfect vantage for appreciating the celestial display. No telescope was needed to feel the immensity, the sheer beauty of the stars. Distant suns whose light had traversed unimaginable voids to sparkle above his city, his home. From this perspective, adrift between earth and sky, it felt as though the carpet were carrying him towards them, lifted on the night breeze like a single detached leaf. The wind caressed his skin, a gentle sigh through his light clothing. After the day's oppressive heat, it felt exquisitely refreshing, like immersing oneself in cool water. He inhaled deeply, catching the distinct, earthy scent of the river, mingling with the fragrance of unseen gardens below, and the faint, pervasive aroma of dust settled by the night dew. Profoundly relaxed now, lulled by the carpet's gentle sway, Cale felt sleep beckoning. He could almost imagine drifting off completely, following the winding river ever onward, perhaps even reaching the distant sea. But the carpet, as if sensing his growing drowsiness, altered its course. Peering over the edge once more, Cale recognized the familiar contours of his own neighborhood slumbering below. There, the distinctive dome of the local temple, nearby the square where daylight hours were spent in play. And now, incredibly, he hovered directly above the roof terrace, the point where his extraordinary journey had commenced. The carpet had brought him home. Its descent was as gradual and gentle as its ascent, lowering him so softly he barely registered the landing. Stepping off onto the cool tiles, Cale turned towards the stairs leading down to his room. This time, the carpet followed, trailing him like a devoted, silent pet. When Cale climbed back into his bed, the carpet settled itself on the floor beside him. Perhaps it, too, felt the pull of fatigue after their nocturnal excursion. Cale mused. They were both weary, ready for rest. As Cale adjusted his pillow and pulled the sheet close, he noticed the carpet subtly shifting its position on the floor. A faint ripple traversed its patterned surface like a sighing breath. Cale imagined it inhaling deeply, mirroring his own slow breath in, then out. He closed his eyes. At last, sleep felt welcome, imminent. Moments later, he drifted away, his mind filled with images of wind and stars and the silent moon-drenched magic of his flight. Kenjiro, whose hands knew the earth better than his own reflection, toiled in the sun-drenched paddies bordering his hamlet. Then, an afternoon sky wept, a sudden downpour chasing him and his fellow cultivators from their labor. Laughter echoed as they scrambled for refuge beneath the sprawling ancient arms of a colossal cedar. Safe within that dry haven, conversation bloomed, and they decided an early meal was deserved. As silver drops drummed a gentle rhythm on the dense canopy far above, they shared food and drink, settling into the easy cadence of talk known only to those long acquainted. Amidst his own quiet enjoyment, a tiny flutter of wings, impossibly delicate against the rain-washed air, alighted upon Kenjiro's knee. A butterfly, its patterns intricate. His hand instinctively rose to brush it away, but a weathered hand intercepted his. "Hold," murmured Master Ishikawa, his eyes deep set like old river stones. "That is no mere insect. It is said the kokoro, the soul, takes flight as a butterfly when we slumber, weaving the very fabric of our dreams across the world." A curious notion, Kenjiro mused. Belief felt distant, yet he withdrew his hand, leaving the winged visitor undisturbed. Moments later, a glance revealed only empty space where it had rested. It had vanished back into the gray afternoon. Soon, the warmth of broth and the comforting weight of sticky rice settled within Kenjiro, bringing a profound contentment. He leaned his head back against the cedar's immense trunk, its rough bark a solid presence. The low hum of his friends' voices became a lulling tide, pulling his thoughts adrift. Effortlessly, consciousness ebbed, and he slept. He surfaced slowly, drifting towards wakefulness. The thought surfaced, how pleasant, sleeping beneath a great tree, breathing the clean, sharp perfume of cedar on the damp air. Yet, as Kenjiro lay nestled against the wood, a stillness registered. The familiar banter, the laughter of his companions, gone. He opened his eyes. He was utterly alone amongst the gnarled serpentine roots of the giant tree. No soul stirred nearby. Only the persistent drip, drip, drip of rain from leaf to lower leaf broke the silence. His friends must have returned to the fields, he reasoned, leaving him to his rest. But straining his eyes, he saw nothing, no figures moving through the rows. A thin mist had crept in with the rain, blurring the edges of the world, making distance uncertain. With each passing breath, the vapor seemed to coalesce, thickening into an obscuring shroud. Kenjiro squinted into the gray expanse. From its deepest heart, shapes emerged, indistinct at first, then resolving into figures walking purposefully towards him. A large company. As they drew nearer, their attire dispelled any notion these were his farming brethren. Such opulent silks, catching even the diffused light, hair secured with pins of gleaming gold, feet shod in sandals of exquisite artistry. These were not the clothes of men who worked the soil. Recognition dawned swiftly. A royal retinue. He scrambled upright, folding himself into a deep, respectful bow. The procession's leader, an older man whose eyes held a surprising twinkle, approached. He bade Kenjiro rise. Such deference was unnecessary, the elder explained. They were emissaries, dispatched by the realm's sovereign lady to seek him out. A matter of grave importance required his presence. Kenjiro straightened, absorbing the full spectacle of the group. Each figure shimmered in robes of crimson and gold silk, whispering softly with every slight movement in the breeze. Their hair, uniformly raven black, was sculpted into diverse, elaborate arrangements. An invisible cloud of fragrance enveloped them, the most complex and alluring perfume Kenjiro had ever encountered. Each inhalation brought a symphony of scents: warm cinnamon, clove, and cardamom, the sweetness of hibiscus, lilac, jasmine, the bright tang of orange and pomegranate. It clung to them, this ethereal aroma announcing their noble passage. What could such an august assembly possibly need from him? They must be mistaken, Kenjiro protested gently. He was but a simple tiller of the land. Yet, if they had journeyed so far, he would humbly offer whatever aid lay within his power. The old man, Elder Kaito, smiled with warmth, assuring him there was no error. The sovereign lady had specifically requested Kenjiro. They beckoned him to join them. Bewildered but swayed by their unwavering certainty, Kenjiro acquiesced. They granted him a moment's privacy to exchange his rough-spun garments for robes of deep blue and shimmering silver they had brought. The traditional attire, they explained, for a guest of the queen. Slipping into the cool silk, Kenjiro had to concede, if they were mistaken, the man they sought must be his perfect double. The robes fit as if tailored precisely for his frame. Thus began the procession's return. Kenjiro, still dazed, swept along in their dignified wake. He walked, marveling at the silken robes he now wore. Impossibly light, the fabric felt too delicate to offer warmth against the damp fog, yet it cocooned him as effectively as his thickest cotton tunic. Even the ornate sandals felt strangely yielding, like treading on packed clouds. Lost in these novel sensations, he barely registered the journey until they stood before the imposing gates of a vast palace. Guards clad in crimson and gold armor swung the portals open, and they passed within. The queen's audience chamber was a trove of wonders beyond Kenjiro's wildest imaginings. Wall hangings woven from the softest threads depicted pivotal moments of the kingdom's history in luminous detail. Every span of floor lay hidden beneath plush rugs, luxurious furs, or intricately patterned bamboo mats of peerless quality. High above, the ceiling was pierced by myriad small, delicate glass panes. Kenjiro pictured himself lying on a rug at twilight, watching the first stars ignite through those crystalline openings. The queen herself, Lady Satsuki, wore robes of the purest, most radiant cream-colored fabric Kenjiro had ever beheld. While his own borrowed silks reflected the lantern light, hers seemed to possess an inner luminescence. Crimson threads embroidered across the fabric formed clusters of small, round, lychee fruits, rendered with such startling realism that Kenjiro felt his mouth water despite himself. Then Lady Satsuki spoke. Her voice was a low murmur, yet it resonated with effortless authority through the hushed chamber. Every syllable was distinct. She explained they had observed Kenjiro for some time, admiring his profound understanding of the earth and its cultivation. He possessed precisely the skills needed to rejuvenate a certain part of her domain, a small island blessed with rich soil and diligent inhabitants, which had nonetheless fallen into decline. The entire realm would be indebted, she declared, if Kenjiro would consent to serve as its governor. Overwhelmed, knowing no other possible response, he accepted the honor with grace. Lady Satsuki smiled, a subtle curve of her lips. Her intuition had served her well. Kenjiro spent the ensuing days within the palace walls, preparing for his voyage to the island province, which lay cradled in the midst of a wide flowing river. The shock of his sudden elevation lingered, yet the flurry of preparations left scant time for contemplation. At last, the day of departure arrived. Accompanied by several knowledgeable advisors, Kenjiro embarked on the journey. It felt as though they traversed the breadth of the land, over rolling green hills, past sprawling fields, through bustling cities and quiet villages. The final stage required crossing the great river, undertaken aboard a magnificent wooden vessel, whose sails, billowing gracefully, were the same creamy white as the Queen's own robes. On the ship's deck, Kenjiro finally allowed his mind to quiet. Standing at the prow, he closed his eyes, feeling the gentle warmth of the sun kiss the backs of his hands. The fresh river air streamed through his hair, stray strands dancing lightly against his face. Avian calls stitched the air above the soft lapping of water against the hull. The vessel's serene, rhythmic rocking reminded Kenjiro of his simple hammock back home, swaying in a lazy summer breeze. Before long, the island emerged from the haze, a jewel upon the water, and the ship navigated towards its modest dock. The moment Kenjiro stepped ashore, he felt the truth of the Queen's words beneath his feet. The earth was yielding, damp, alive. Tall, verdant grasses carpeted the land, and majestic trees soared towards the sky, offering cool respite from the sun. His advisors guided him towards the governor's residence, his designated home and workplace. As they approached, they offered apologies for its humble scale compared to the splendors of the royal palace. But Kenjiro, who had known only the confines of his family's farmhouse, stared in disbelief. Smaller than the Queen's dwelling, yes, but the estate boasted numerous rooms filled with unimagined comforts. Deeply cushioned chairs, soft rugs covering the floors, and a vast bed piled high with feathers. He knew instantly he could find happiness here, and he did. Initially, the weight of his duties felt immense, but through his first year, he learned the rhythms of the island and its people. Together, through shared effort and Kenjiro's guidance, they brought forth the first truly bountiful harvest the island had seen in over a decade. To mark this triumph, Kenjiro hosted a magnificent feast, ensuring every single citizen shared in the celebration. In this manner, time flowed onward. 15 years he served as governor, patiently transforming the island into a thriving haven for all its inhabitants. Wild woodlands were gently tamed, pruned into orderly orchards yielding the sweetest plums, cherries, and pears in the entire kingdom. Once neglected fields now produced more rice and grain each year than the islanders could consume in 10. Kenjiro saw to it that the surplus was carefully transported back across the river, sharing the island's prosperity with the wider realm. As governor, Kenjiro earned the deep affection of the island's people. He mediated disputes with fairness and good humor, orchestrated joyous celebrations for births, weddings, and milestones, and still found moments to return to the fields himself, his hands finding solace in the familiar work of farming. Then, one day, a messenger arrived from the queen. An attendant, journeying by boat, conveyed Lady Satsuki's decree. It was time for Kenjiro to return to the place from whence he came. His invaluable contributions to the island would never be forgotten, the attendant assured him, neither by the queen nor by its grateful populace. Sadness touched Kenjiro. This island had become a true home. That evening, however, his advisor surprised him with a farewell celebration surpassing all previous festivities in its joyous abandon. The food, the drink, the dancing were unparalleled. When the last echoes of merriment faded, and Kenjiro had bid farewell to the final lingering guest, he sought his bedchamber. He lay down upon the enormous feather bed, sinking slowly into its embrace, feeling it envelop him like a warm cloud. Sleep beckoned, pulling him gently away from wakefulness. But before succumbing, he cast one last look upward. Upon his arrival, he had requested a single alteration to his chambers, the installation of small, delicate glass panes in the ceiling, allowing him to watch the stars emerge one by one. Gazing at them now, he saw their distant, steady twinkle against the velvet night. Within minutes, Kenjiro slept. The following morning, the queen's attendant escorted him to the dock. The boat waited, silent upon the water, ready for the return journey. Kenjiro took a final lingering look at the island as he stepped aboard. The flourishing orchards, the fertile fields, the prosperous village nestled in the distance. The anchor was raised. The journey began. As they pulled away from the shore, a fog began to roll across the water. It was unusually thick, yet strangely, it carried no chill. Instead, it felt warm and soft, like being wrapped in a cotton blanket. Soon, the fog grew so dense Kenjiro could not see more than an arm's length ahead. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the boat was gone. He was back beneath the giant cedar, the familiar shapes of his friends around him. He blinked, disoriented, running his hands over the cool, damp earth, still moist from the earlier rain. One of the farmers chuckled at his bewildered movements. "Enjoy your rest, Kenjiro?" he inquired good-naturedly. Slowly, Kenjiro asked, How long was I asleep?" The farmer regarded him with a puzzled expression. "Only a short while. 10 minutes, perhaps." Then Kenjiro recounted his experience, the regal procession, the queen's opulent chamber, the island, the long years of governance, all of it. The other men listened, rapt, to his extraordinary tale. When he finished, silence fell, broken only by his quiet question. What could it possibly mean? The farmers murmured amongst themselves, unsure, offering tentative interpretations. But before their discussion could deepen, a quiet voice interjected. It was Master Ishikawa, the elder who had spoken of the butterfly. His tone was soft, like wind sighing through tall grass. He explained that he had watched Kenjiro lean against the tree and drift off. At the precise instant sleep claimed him, a small yellow butterfly had fluttered out from Kenjiro's tunic near his heart. The other men nodded. They recalled seeing the butterfly but hadn't noted its origin. Master Ishikawa continued. Kenjiro's butterfly, he said, had settled briefly on the cedar's bark before several ants approached it. Gently, the ants grasped the butterfly and carried it down into a small opening among the tree's roots. Minutes later, just before Kenjiro stirred and awoke, the very same butterfly emerged from the hole and flew back into his tunic. Perhaps, the old man suggested, this explained the vivid dream of the procession, the queen, and the island governorship. Kenjiro and the others exchanged glances. It seemed plausible, yet there was one way to be certain. Carefully together, they eased away some of the soil at the base of the cedar, near the hole Master Ishikawa indicated. There, nestled amongst the roots, lay a miniature world, a small ant colony. One section, a patch of earth cloaked in vibrant green moss, struck Kenjiro with a jolt of recognition. Recent rainwater had carved a tiny channel around it, creating the distinct impression of an island surrounded by water. And floating in that minuscule streamlet was a delicate vessel, crafted from a twig and a sliver of bark. Wordlessly, the farmers gently replaced the disturbed earth, careful not to disrupt the tiny inhabitants further. By now, the rain had ceased entirely. After a few more moments of quiet reflection, the men dispersed, returning to their fields. But Kenjiro was forever changed by that afternoon. For the remainder of his days, he carried the memory of his time as governor, a fond remembrance warming him from within. Each day, as he guided his plow, scattered seed, or gathered the harvest, the sun on his back would evoke the feel of silken robes. Every bite of fruit tasted subtly sweeter, reminiscent of island feasts. And often a passing breeze would seem to carry the faint, imagined scent of the wide river encircling his island home. And it need hardly be said that before Kenjiro finally left the shade of the great cedar that day, he placed half of his uneaten lunch near the entrance to the ant colony, a humble, final gift offered to his gracious hosts, a silent thanks for a wondrous adventure woven from a dream.